Oh, I am on camera. All right, everyone, welcome to the PYRESWAP show. And can we also be on Discord if you could, sir? Today's Market Monday, and of course, we're going to make this show extremely short while we're continuing to finalize the production of finalize the production and output. Oh, we got a little echo chamber here. Finalize the production and output of Learn PYRESWAP. And I think that a lot of people, I explained this internally, and I think I want to explain it externally as well, about like why this project is so critical to our goal. And I'll explain it to you guys in the way of linear math and exponential math. And can you guys hear me in general chat? Do I have actual audibility? Am I not audible? In general chat? Audio check in Discord. Audio check in Discord. None? Oh, okay, thank you, Piggy. Thank you. Okay, so again, all right, thank you so much for, thank you, Kirezo, Trigger, Alessio, Pega, I appreciate it a lot, you guys. Okay, so generally speaking here, one of the biggest, I guess you could say, bottlenecks or hindrances to this project's marketing and growth is the fact that I have to basically do all of it. Does that make sense? Like it becomes so, somebody described it as convoluted, and I took offense to that a long time ago, but I do understand what they meant now. It becomes so complex, complicated, and the opposite of simplistic that effectively, even if somebody else wanted to evangelize this project, they're kind of spinning their wheels. This is the goal of Learn PYRESWAP. Okay, like to literally stop this from happening. Because if this were the case, this project would already be exponentially growing. Does that make sense? So this is why Learn PYRESWAP, which again seems like it's this gigantic project, because it is so critical to this project's success. And also saving Phantom Opera. The point being here right now is that you have one guy, and we'll call this guy 5, and we'll represent 5 by the letter P here, and I hope you guys can see this. In order to evangelize this project, like 5 has to specifically communicate to people almost as if it's one-on-one communication. Does that make sense? It is entirely reliant that I basically have a back and forth kind of Q&A, figure out what people already understand and what they don't understand, and then basically explain the mechanisms of this project and what it can do for them. Would you guys agree? And I want you guys to know it's not even clear to me about like where to begin with that. Like it's not like we don't have like without Learn Pyre, we don't even have a process for how I would do it. Does that make sense? Like this was, it's actually pretty crazy how critical this is. But I want you to know that us learning this now is only a boon for the future as well. Okay? So this right here takes forever because it takes a long time to describe this project. Does that make sense? So I end up having to do it again and again and again. Therefore, in order to hit the much larger goal of saving the whole Phantom Opera and getting to $1 billion market cap, this will not work. Does that make sense? In fact, marketing in the Phantom neighborhood will also not work, right? We need to market bigger than that, and we need to market in ways where one domino can knock over 2. So instead of 5 having a bunch of one-to-one relationships with everybody who's invested, or one-to-one conversations, like there needs to be a curriculum, as it were, where like, let's put it this way, 5 does an interview. Let's say 5 goes on 10 YouTube interviews. Does that make sense? Whichever one of these anybody thinks is the best, all they have to do is find the link to that YouTube interview and send it to somebody else. Because these YouTube interviews will be a lot easier to understand, and they'll have a clear CTA to go to Learn PYRESWAP. So what that means is, it now becomes like this. It becomes like, does this make sense to you guys? Does this make sense in like a roughest way? It means that like people, it means that after people learn about the project, 5 no longer needs to be in like the chain of the evangelization. Does that make sense? I want you guys to know that that Learn Pyre, it did get bigger than we expected it to be in December. But like, that doesn't mean it's gonna be shittier. Yeah, like this is the thing. I said it last week internally. We might end up doing some revisions to Learn Pyre, like a few revisions when we figure out where we have large choke points. But like by the time we're at version 3 of Learn Pyre, I think version 3 will be able for us to get to a $1 billion market cap. I'm being honest. Because like all of the theoretics of like marketing and conversion and like education, they're all just dialed into the maximum. I don't think I've ever seen, like I really do insist that this is the best marketing mechanism that's ever been in Web3. Does that make sense? Yeah. I know that you guys think like better than all of Twitter. Better than all of Twitter for one project. Let's put it that way. Exactly, Pega. And you know, there's 3 phases of a plan here. Oh, and by the way, if you guys think that I'm like blowing smoke, feel free to ask Pega. Pega has seen me do these internal presentations where I go into major details, and you can determine if you think that I'm like a crazy person. Okay? Yeah. Like I promise you, I cannot risk overlooking a detail. I have to think about every single detail. Does that make sense? Every single detail. And what has been, I guess you could say, a big, I guess, cause for delay is that I have to do this all myself. Yeah, like almost all, well, I'm sorry. My developers help with the website deployment, but at a certain point, and of course, Mr. Producer helps me actually make the video content. But like, as far as like writing it and structuring it, it is in fact just one man's job. And in the future, it won't be this hard. But like, also a lot of the writing this time around was done for world building, which allows us to do more and more of it later. Does that make sense? So like, the delays around it, I think are exactly what it takes to build something of this quality. Arguably, I would say that the blueprint for Learn Pyre is even more complex than the blueprint for phase 1 of PYRESWAP. I'm just being honest with you. And it needs to be, because that is like the size of the problem. I think that a lot of people think that our marketing problem is smaller than it is. Like, oh, we need more Twitter ambassadors. We could have 5 times as many Twitter ambassadors right now, and there would still be these conceptual problems about like, do our Twitter ambassadors know how to talk about the project? Do our Twitter ambassadors have things that they can link people to, should they be interested in, like Learn Pyre, where they can actually get presented the entirety of the opportunity? I hope it makes sense. So if you're looking for like, where would the exponent start? Like, where would the exponent in buy pressure start? Where would the exponent in the chart start? It starts with me having the interviews that feed into Learn Pyre. Because after I complete those 10 interviews, like whichever one anybody thinks is the best, anybody can just evangelize this project by sharing that interview with somebody else. That interview, I will have a call to action of going to Learn Pyre, at which point they will go to Learn Pyre. The amount of video content we ask for them to watch before buying is not that deep. Does that make sense? I think a lot of people think that we expect them to watch 4 hours of fantasy fiction before they buy the token, and no, that's not true. In the beginning, the first 4 videos, the first 5 videos, I guess, should be less than like, it's quite possible to be close to an hour more of video. Does that make sense? Yeah, it might be more than an hour, might be less than an hour, because I don't know how long video 5 takes exactly. But generally speaking, it's right on par with the amount of video content that we expect our avatars are comfortable with watching in the first place. Does that make sense? Every crypto investor is by default a content consumer, just to be clear. Like every single detail is thought about this. We're starting off with YouTube people, YouTube audience members, because we're steering them to another website where they watch another YouTube video. Does that make sense? This YouTube video calls them to action to watch another YouTube video. and another and another and another. They're just watching a YouTube video. They can stop at any time, but every single video is designed to add value to them and effectively hook their curiosity. Does that make sense? Like, legitimately, we are giving away value with every single video. Does that make sense? Like nothing is really being charged for. We basically close them on buying the token on video 5 and on video 10. I want you guys to know, on video 10, anybody who gets the video 10 has a very, very high chance of buying a whole bunch of the token. And the reason being is that if they watch video 10, that means they watched videos 6, 7, 8, and 9, which are all the fantasy fiction videos. And if they watch all 4 of the fantasy fiction videos, they now really like the project. Does that make sense? Like, if they watch all 4 of them, they really, really like this project. Do you get what I'm saying? And if they really, really like this project, even if we still haven't told them shit about tokenomics yet, they're going to want to invest in this project because we already picked out their crypto avatar from the get-go. Does that make sense? They're already a crypto avatar. Do you get what I'm saying? So we teach them how to invest in this project. Video 5, we even have them invest a little bit. Once they get to video 10, they're going to invest a lot more. Does that make sense? Like, I mean, every single... It's like a chess game. Like, every single thing, yeah. Yeah. Okay, Alessio, learn Pyre in a nutshell. Is a video marketing funnel. Okay? Right? Video marketing funnel. Okay? So the entirety, and I will explain this, Alessio, since you asked, I'm going to explain the shit out of this today because I feel very, very good today. This video marketing funnel is built from 3 authors specifically. And these 3 authors are Russell Brunson, Alex Hormozi, and Donald Miller. And what the video marketing funnel is about is starting off with meeting the user, meeting our target avatar, meeting our crypto avatar, with the biggest pain point of ours that we can solve. And you guys might have heard of this, talking about this before, like how to tell when to sell. Does that make sense? Oh, believe it or not, it is not. Yeah, we literally do not talk about anything in the docs. We don't talk about vibrattility. We don't talk about terminal utility. We don't talk about the IWV. We don't talk about meeting. We don't talk about tomb forks. Nope. We only talk about Pyre Phantom. Legitimately, and that is we give instructions to acquire it. Yeah, legitimately, we don't, And the thing is, we do this only because we are explaining that Pyre Phantom has fundamental analysis behind it. Does that make sense? That's the illusion. Hey, by the way, this is the token that that you can, in fact, it'll solve your other problems like losing money in meme coins. Does that make sense? Because this is a token with fundamental analysis behind it, right? And then as soon as they buy the token, before I can teach them fundamental analysis, I need to first make them care. Does that make sense? Okay, it's 10 videos, Alessio. So it's a video marketing funnel that is effectively, it's a landing page with 1 video. There is no text. We don't how to tell when to sell. You have a whole bunch of text copy, right? It literally writes it out in 1,300 words, whatever, right? But yeah, we do not have that or 2,000 words. Yeah, we do not have that on Learn Pyre, right? So video 1 is in fact it is basically Fi's backstory. So this is a quick backstory of me. And most importantly, this backstory video is meant to highlight me as a guide figure. And for example of a guide figure, I want you to understand that the whole spine of our strategy has storytelling in its theoretics. So what's most important, Alessio, is that everybody, because stories ring so true to us, everybody is the protagonist in their own story. Does that make sense? So everybody is their own Luke Skywalker. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so since everybody is in their own Luke Skywalker, I need to tell my backstory in a way that highlights me that I can be Obi-Wan Kenobi or Master Yoda. Does that make sense? Like a guide figure. Does that make sense? In order to demonstrate that you are a guide figure, effectively, you need to demonstrate two things, okay? You need to demonstrate empathy, and B, you need to demonstrate competence. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is there something funny over there? No? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, Alessio, and it's not even that. They don't even feel bullish right away. Like, they first need to feel bullish on me. Does that make sense? Like, they first need to imagine them being like leaned back, maximum skepticness. We're trying to get them to like lean a little bit forward every time and take the belief, or should I say, risk the belief that I know what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that is literally it. They will feel more and more bullish as they go through the videos. Does that make sense? That's literally it. Every single video they watch increases their bullishness. And the reason why, Alessio, is what we do with these videos is we target the areas of their skepticism first. We have to target their objections first, like subconsciously. So my backstory is to demonstrate empathy and competence, meaning like I had to talk about like me losing money in crypto, right? Or some other thing like that, or explain why I have the competence of like learning finance, banking, and economics. Does that make sense? So that is it. That's right there. This other backstory is also involving. It also has something called an epiphany bridge, and this epiphany bridge has to also have like what you would say is like the big belief. So the big belief for us is fundamental analysis. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying? Fundamental analysis, like investing versus gambling, and then like analyzing versus guessing. Does that make sense? FIGA? I don't know. I don't know if that's an acronym there. Hang on. Investing versus gambling. Okay. Anyways, these next three videos are done in. This is done in like a digestive sequence. So we kind of like. We're asking people for small amounts of their attention up front, if that makes sense. So video 2 is a false belief about the vehicle. And believe it or not, I haven't even written 2, 3, and 4 yet because I'm still focused on like the larger chunks of story. A false belief about the vehicle is that anything in crypto is a scam. Does that make sense? So we have to we have to tell a short story here and explain why anybody who thinks that fundamental analysis is not possible in crypto, why they could be wrong. Does that make sense? So we basically have to give like some sort of indication and evidence about why that belief would be wrong. Does that make sense? Like a false belief about the vehicle itself. Video 3 is a false belief that is internal. And a false belief that is internal, here I'll write them like this. A false belief that is internal is a false belief that somebody would have about themselves and their ability to use fundamental analysis as a way to solve their problem. Does that make sense? So like anybody who thinks they're not smart enough. Does that make sense? People that aren't smart enough, or people that don't speak the language. These are like what I expect to think that the false belief internal, or they don't have time. They're not smart enough. They don't speak the language, or they don't have the time. It's going to be like number 3 is a combination of that. Does that make sense? Number 4, false belief about external. And external could be something about the economy. Right now, a false belief that people have external is about Sonic. Does that make sense? Like Phantom's going to die, right? It's like, well, I know of at least 2 validators that are going to keep going. And all you got to do to keep validators going is to make them see the money in it. And if you create volume for the chain, right? Like, we're actually not going to address Sonic on the thing. Like we're just going to fucking blur past that. Does that make sense? We're going to just talk about external, whether they talk about the economy or whether they talk about crypto in general. Does that make sense? Video 5 is the tutorial close. And in our own language, we talk about how we have a 3-part plan that has 3 stages. Does that make sense? So the first, right around the end of video 4, we begin alluding that they're now ready for the 3-part plan that has 3 stages. And the first one right here is, I guess we call it the countdown stage. Does that make sense? And the countdown stage is the 3, 2, 1 video, because we teach them how to spin up a MetaMask and 3 ways to get funds to it. Then we teach them 2 ways to bridge to Phantom Opera. And then we teach them 1 token to buy when we get there. Do you guys know what that token is? It's Pyre Phantom. Does that make sense? We have to be extremely simplistic. Make sense? Later on in the future, if you want, we could create like alternative versions of video 5 for PyreX, PyreBnB, etc., etc. Does that make sense? But right now, literally, we have to get all our numbers correct on like 1 token. And I want to do it on Phantom because we already have the biggest community on Phantom, right? So like I'm picking Phantom to appease the user base, if that makes sense. Additionally, I'm motivated by my own heroic nature that everybody knows. So I think saving the Phantom Opera, like that fucking, you know, that lets a little fire under me, if that makes sense. And the fact that it doesn't have a lab behind it, I think is even better. But more on that way later. But then legitimately, we get them to buy Pyre Phantom here. We ask them to buy a very small amount. I think on the demo, it'll be like 10 Phantoms worth or 5 Phantoms worth. Does that make sense? Like, it'll be like, we tell them to buy 10 Phantoms worth of the token. And the whole point is that they now know how to buy the token. Does that make sense? Like, we get them to buy a small amount because once you close the first dollar with somebody, it's way easier to get the second dollar. Does that make sense? So, like, legitimately, we ask for a very small amount here. And the reason why is we want them to have, like, the first dollar across the line where we say, oh, I've bought that token before. I've held that token before. I'm holding it right now. Also, now that they have some skin in the game, they're going to be a lot more likely to go through the videos 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So videos 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This is TIFF. 7, 8, 9, TIFF. And I don't know, can you see video 10? Can you see it, kind of? Okay. Anyways, yeah, so video 10, I'll just eliminate. I'll just write it like this. And then video 10 is what you call the stack, which is a Russell Brunson script. And, okay, so Alessio, do you understand videos 1 through 5, more or less? Like, I'm just talking to you, Alessio. Like, this is your own private PYRESWAP show. Yeah. Anybody else listening? Okay. Yeah, because you can't see it. You can't see it yet, but you'll see it. You'll see it soon. Don't worry, okay? Videos 1 through 5, does everybody get the general gist of it? Does everybody get the general gist of it? Okay, fantastic. Videos 6 through 9, legitimately, I pivot and I go to this green screen here. I might do the whole thing in front of green screen, but like, literally the green screen setup will in fact be in full-blown fantasy fiction storyteller mode. And the reason being is that, like, this is no longer like we're asking them. Does that make sense? I'm gonna give you here's an incredible distinction to make when it comes to what you're asking people to do. So you guys know CTA stands for call to action, right? Well, believe it or not, there's really like 2 different ways you can think about call to action. And you can think of it as like call to effort, or you can think about it as call to reward. Does that make sense to you guys? So like, I don't want you guys to think that videos 6, 7, 8, and 9 are like call to efforts. Legitimately, like the whole thing about it is about telling them a story that people will actually watch and even binge. Does that make sense? Like it is meant to be like high entertainment content. It literally, Alessio, if you remember me telling those stories back in December, with the 3 merchants that were like borrowing money from each other and some shit, that was like me fitting 80% of it as education and 20% as entertainment. Does that make sense? Right? Would you say that like really the whole story was educational, but like I put a little bit of fantasy fiction on it, right? In this case, it's the fucking opposite. It's like 90-10 with 90% being entertainment and 10% being educational. The reason Learn Pyre began taking way longer than I realized, the reason it took way longer than I realized, Lesio, is because I realized I needed to write a lot more story in order to succeed at educating. Does that make sense? I needed to realize, like, wait a minute, I can't just write 4 stories that are 20 minutes long. I have to write like a shit ton of fantasy fiction in order to get people hooked to the point that they like, that the education like sneaks into their brain. I'm not even joking. Yeah, like, but that's what I had to do in order to succeed at this. Does that make sense? Like, there's no, like, you can see people in the general chat, they still have no idea how the project works. Does that make sense? This is like, this has been, you know, just another highlight of the failure, right? But like, this is the solution. That was the problem, this is the solution. So, everything, videos 6, 7, 8, 9 are like call to rewards. Like the, as they literally start watching videos 6, 7, 8, 9, they begin learning the lore of the fantasy fiction. Does that make sense? Like they get brought into a world and they get brought into a protagonist that has a financial problem. Yeah, the protagonist has a financial problem. In fact, the story TIFF, T-I-F-F, yeah, it's called The Investment. The Investment at Fergus Fenbrook. Like legitimately, it's even the title is part of the hook, if that makes sense. Like, we already kind of established that they are, in fact, like a crypto investor, quote unquote. Does that make sense? And then we start telling them a story called The Investment of Fergus Fenbrook. They already are like primed to think about like this protagonist is a guy who's making an investment. I'm also making an investment. They already line up mentally with thinking about like him. Does that make sense? You will too, by the way. Yeah. I'm not saying that to you specifically, Leslie. I'm saying like everybody is here is aligned to thinking about Fergus Fenbrook as like a protagonist they can relate to, that they have rapport with, if that makes sense. So then legitimately, the first videos 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's the Investment of Fergus Fenbrook has acts, right? So you have Act 1, and then you have Act 4. Does that make sense? So there's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4. Act 1 almost does no education. Does that make sense? Act 1 has like... Act 1 is like... And people who have heard Act 1... Let me see. Who's in my audience today that have heard of Act 1? Let's see. Okay, yeah, so I know that... let's see. Kia Dezo and Zonic have at least heard the shit out of Act 1. At least in a very, very bastard-like retelling. But like, Act 1 is not about like me being Professor Five. I'm going to talk to you about fucking net interest income, right? Or like, I'm going to talk to you about the bond aftermarket, right? Nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? So, I want you to know that part of my research for this project was to figure out like why economics is so hard to teach in the first place. And the reason being, actually, do you guys want me to bring some books out? Because I believe you're looking this up. I'm going to actually do this. Sorry. Yeah, we'll be done in a minute. We'll be done. Economics is considered... Okay. So a university called Harvard, they do these surveys where college graduates graduate, right? And they survey them in the years after, and they see what they retained based on what subjects they took. Does that make sense? So economics has like the lowest retention. Like it just drops the fuck off. Do you guys know that? It has like one of the steepest drop-offs, that even after people learn economics, they do not, like it does not, like it doesn't stick. Does that make sense? So like I have to basically solve this larger problem about making economics stick. And I'm actually going to show you, these books that I got, because like these were the books that were kind of available. Yeah, I'll be back in a second. Do you want to screen me, a standby screen? Or yeah, whatever. Okay, I'll be back in a second. Yeah, So, some music, that'd be great. Okay, we return to the PYRESWAP show. And I'll wrap this up shortly because I know you guys just want to see output. I get it. I also want to see an output. I want nothing more than to be past this, to be clear. Okay, so these are 3 books that I acquired from Amazon for looking for Econ 101. This book right here is called Econ 101, The Complete Guide to Economics for Beginners. Written by Bharat Bhuval Nishad. And I had this pink note here on the cover because I had to write to myself, this book sucks. The author should be embarrassed. It is a transcript of a recording. This is one of the worst books on econ I've ever witnessed. It's only like 120 pages long, but like, I'll be honest, it's kind of like learning it from probably the PYRESWAP show, and then somebody just like threw that together like, oh yeah, that's Econ 101. And it doesn't have any structure, and it kind of like does not meet the reader where they're at. Now here, I also got Economics for Dummies. Does that make sense? Economics for Dummies. Because I'm like, hey, you know what? What's the best way for me to think about like the easiest econ lessons to teach? And the fact of the matter is that like, this still has like way too much shit in it. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it shows you contents at a glance, and it talks about consumer choices and stuff. But then like, I think it still is just like jumping around all over the fucking place. Yeah, Jeffrey, because I gotta do research. On like, what is Econ 101? So then here we have another book, Economics 101, and this is by Alfred Mill, and it's called The Crash Course in Money and Finance. And it does like, fuck man, it literally starts going into propaganda. So it's like, what's the difference between capitalism and socialism? It's like, they don't fucking need that right now. Does that make sense? Like, what is economics? Opportunity cost, the emergence of free trade, and the importance of comparative advantage. Like, this is way too much shit. Like, this is not Econ 101. Like, legitimately, I think that the investment of Fergus Fenbrook, and again, I'm going to go in this order. We're able to like chain our concepts in this incredibly structured way. By the way, I did not like know how to do this before, but we chain our concepts in a way that makes the listener actually care about what they're hearing. Does that make sense? Because the first things first is we start talking about, like, okay, I want you to know that this is in the in TIFF we have a concept chain because the protagonist has to learn these lessons in the right order. Does that make sense? Because if the protagonist can learn them, then the audience can learn them. Does that make sense? So you have to get extremely literate. By the way, I am not the protagonist, to be clear. Yeah, like this is not like a book where Father's the protagonist because it doesn't make sense if I have to learn economics. You get what I'm saying? Anyways, so in the investment in Fergus Fenwick, we have a concept chain, and it literally starts off with doing differentiation. So the first things is like investing versus gambling. And the reason that we start off with investing versus gambling, Alessio, he is like a Johnny Marmoset, yeah. But like, I do love him now. I do love this protagonist, yeah. I think you guys will really like him too. Yeah, Fergus Fenbrook, he is a wizard. He does not use, okay, I'll tell you guys about okay, tomorrow I'll talk to you guys, to the fucking protagonist. You know what? I would say, Maddie, that the fact that storytelling has been part of the meme coin scene and then now it's still being part of it, I would say we're doing the right exact thing that everybody knows about. And it's just going to be... I'm very bullish on this, let's put it that way. Investing versus gambling. Then we have to talk about analyzing versus guessing. Does that make sense? Because how on earth do we explain... How on earth do we explain what analyzing is versus guessing? Does that make sense? And like, for those of you who don't know, the protagonist loses all his money gambling at the probably the 3/4 mark of Act 1. Does that make sense? Anyways, okay, analyzing versus guessing, right? Then we go right into, let me think about this. Is it scarcity versus abundance here? Let me think. Yeah, okay. When we go scarcity and abundance, we have to do also, yeah, value is subjective. Don't worry, value is subjective also has this, also has comparativity, comparison. Value subjective also has like this differentiation thing because the way that I can describe it is when we breathe, when we inhale, we value oxygen and we don't value carbon dioxide. Does everybody agree? Right? Oxygen is what we want. Carbon dioxide is what we don't want. Everybody get that? That's what we, Homo sapiens, value. Correct? Okay. Well, a tree would be the opposite. Does that make sense? A tree wants carbon dioxide and it wants to get rid of oxygen. You guys know what I'm talking about here? You know, okay, I hope you guys do. I'm assuming that due to the, yeah, thank you, Mr. Producer. All right, I don't know if you're trolling me or about to give me some feedback, but yeah. Okay, you guys do what I mean, right? Value is subjective. Like, legitimately, like, people prefer different things, right? And it depends on their context. Okay, value is subjective. Then we go into supply and demand. And I feel like I skipped one. Supply versus demand. Okay. Then we go supply versus demand. Then we go legitimately to, let's see, investments, gambling, and I have this written upstairs, and like it's I feel like I'm gonna miss one here, but anyways. Then we go for supply is demand. Then we go from supply versus demand to price versus quantity. Right? Because those of you who have seen supply and demand on a diagram, you guys know price versus quantity are right there. Then we have to talk about price as a signal. Does that make sense? Price as signal, which is again like, understand that price is information. So this kind of opens up the idea that like when prices change, this is like a signal to other people in the fucking market. Does that make sense? Then we do price as signal. Then we go to inflation versus deflation. Make sense? From inflation versus deflation, from here it goes to it changes a little bit because I wanted to also set the stage for the factions, right? So like knights and witches and stuff like that. So number 9 is cooperation versus competition. Does that make sense? So you can see it right now when the channelers call out a play. You can see that there is like this terrazzo, if you will, of competition versus cooperation. Does that make sense? Like there's a value in the cooperation, but then is there also a value in the competition? It goes into that concept, which by the way, to the channelers, there's still a whole lot for me to teach you guys about how the game works, and I've been talking about it internally. All we're gonna do is just get the fucking price up to the vibratile range. Does that make sense? Because I don't feel like it makes sense to train you guys again on how the game will work. It makes more sense for me to just get the price into the vibratile range, right? Everybody wants in the vibratile range. That's also where the majority of future time should kind of be. Does that make sense? Or should I say a larger portion of future time will kind of be? So like once we're in the vibratile range and we have a large enough user base, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like there's a lot more that you guys can do that I haven't like set aside time to teach and explain, but I'll just wait until we're in the vibratile range. Does that make sense? Like that, I think everybody just wants that. So, inflation versus deflation. Oh yeah, but by the way, from Learn Pyre, we don't teach any of the tokenomics. So like by all means, expect that people will be ending up in this Discord, and even though they're very bullish on the project and they already hold Pyre Phantom, they will not know shit about meeting or the IWV. They won't know the actual technicals of it. But what they will know is they'll know the fucking background concepts needed to understand about how these mechanisms affect the overall system. Does that make sense? Do you get what I'm saying? Like we're just teaching these concepts. 9, 10, 11, and 12 are like competition versus cooperation, game theory, like basic game theory. The last one is market structures. And so market structures is more about thinking about buyers and sellers as like groups. Anyways, I think there's 12 or 13 concepts. One of them I might have skipped. I don't know. But the point being is, at the end, yeah, exactly. And also, Maddie, the content we're being very high effort about. So like, there's no way that they're gonna watch the entire 4-part fucking fantasy fiction book that I wrote. By the way, this is the size of Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, like this is a book that I wrote. Does that make sense to you guys? So like, I know that you guys are like antsy and you have whatever, your general concerns. Like I'm not blind to what you see or deaf to what you hear or numb to what you feel. But like, in order for me to really knock the marketing out of the park, I had to write an entire fantasy fiction novel. Granted, I've been AI assisted, but also I've been able to do this in under 90 days. Like, I don't know what you guys think as far as like output should go, but like I would crush all of you, to be clear. Like, I don't think any one of you guys could write a fantasy fiction book under 90 days. Like, it's way harder than I expected. This is not like a skill that I consider myself to have. Does that make sense? But not that I even want to talk shit right now, but I'm saying like, yeah, please believe me that I don't half-ass things. Goodness gracious. The last few things, yeah, it's competition versus cooperation, game theory. There might be another one that I'm not thinking about, and then fucking market structures. Does that make sense? And the reason being is that market structures is thinking more about like when buyers saturate and when sellers saturate, right? Alessio, they will because like, it's not, oh, Alessio, they don't have to read anything. Yeah, they're not reading anything. This is all delivered through video. Yep. Yeah, like the people who want to be like really high speed, maybe we'll publish it in book form for them. Yeah, but like I think that we will, I think the story might get revised maybe 1 or 2 times, and then maybe that one will be the one we might commit to being a book. Yeah, so right now we'll be doing the video version before the book version, and the video version is written more like I'm narrating it because I am. But yeah, Alessio, I guarantee you, people will go through it all because it's being done entirely for the sake of like content. Yeah, exactly. Like it's done, everything about it is instinctive to the human psyche about wanting to listen. So before we had books and videos, Do you guys know how storytelling took place? Right? I mean, Paleolithic. Like, it was done around a fucking campfire. Do you guys get what I'm saying? This is where the idea of the narrator comes from. Does that make sense? The narrator is like a critical component in storytelling. Even today, well, I guess it was like a few years ago now. Do you guys remember Kevin Spacey in House of Cards, which was the American version? Do you guys remember this on Netflix? Jerry, that'd be great. That would be great. In fact, I don't know if we can get Morgan Freeman on such short notice. Right now, Jerry will be voiced by me. I might do character voices too. Pirate Booster might talk me out of character voices later on. But yeah, just so you know, I might do character voices. Yeah, there might be a few character voices that I'm good at. By the way, we can also later on get AI to do character voices. Yeah, like you can get you can spin up an AI voice actor. I believe me or not, we've actually I'm actually pretty proud of this project as far as like what we really figured out that AI can do as far as like content generation. Yeah. Alessio, how about this? I'll reshoot all of it when we get to Peg, okay? Yeah, if you guys insist. But arguably, I think that the way we deliver it the first time will be great. And to be clear, I'm going to be. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you guys can pay for the voice actors. How about that? You guys can start a GoFundMe where you guys fund the voice actor, the voice actor budgets. Or we could just, again, yeah, don't worry about it, okay? How about this? Don't worry about it. I promise you the voice acting is not going to be the make or break, okay? But I want you guys to understand, did you see the set with the green screen? Do you guys remember seeing the picture where like there's armchairs in front of the green screen? It's right there. It's right across the room, but yeah. Well done. Okay. Anyways, the point being is, I'm gonna literally be in full-blown fantasy fiction LARP gear. Like I'm literally gonna, it's not gonna be a blazer. I'm gonna shift off screen like this, and then on the camera, I'm literally gonna be in a fucking costume. Like boom, immediate. Does that make sense? It's not a live video. It's all pre-recorded, right? So I'm gonna be like shifting off camera and then immediately entering into this world where suddenly the guy that I was just talking to about buying Pyre Phantom. Yeah, exactly, Maddie. Yeah. I'm thinking more like I'm going to go in this like bard style fashion. Does that make sense? Because the bard is the storyteller character, but it will be like I'm in a wizard study. Let's put it that way. In fact, I might be in a wizard study that's even in the plot of the book, by the way. Yeah. Anyways, the point being is, I have this green screen behind me, and it's like, oh shit, is this guy in a wizard study or whatever? Like, maybe, maybe not. But the point being here is that if you can imagine that there's a fireplace, right? So imagine this is a fireplace, right? And imagine that we have these fucking chairs here. Yeah, I'm gonna draw a little fire here for you too. Okay. Do you guys see it? Can you guys visualize the setting of two armchairs next to a fireplace? Are you guys with me? Let me know if I've lost anybody. Phenomenal. Maybe we'll work. Okay. Nobody's been lost. Anyways, above the fireplace is this fucking is a picture frame. Is a very ornate picture frame. Make sense to you guys? Anyways, this is a magic picture frame, and when I start reading the book, this picture frame literally grows into the background, and we start putting CRT lines on it, by the way. Yeah, so this picture frame is in fact a CRT television. That's magic. And it grows into the background, so then when I'm telling the story, it's like I'm there, but really the scenery is inside the fucking story. Does that make sense? We're no longer in the fucking wizard study anymore. Does that make sense? You guys remember Mario 64, where you go into the picture? Yeah, it'll be just like that. Okay, guys, any questions? Yeah. By the way, I'm just going to finish the fucking job. So, like, I know that a lot of people are upset. I want you guys to know something. After we get the peg, you guys will be upset again. Does that make sense? Like you guys will always find another reason to be upset. And I want you to know that, like, I'm not numb to what you feel. Does that make sense? I want you to know that, like, any and all delays have been caused from the fact that I realized I got to over-deliver and not under-deliver. Does that make sense? So the point being here is that the only way for me to appease the people who are upset is to dilute them. Does that make sense? Right? So if you're upset, Rolf, you'll be upset again. So the point being here is that the only way to make them not upset is to dilute them to being insignificant. Does that make sense? Like, the only way for me to solve their problem is to make it so there's 7,000 people in this Discord. Does that make sense? And then I don't ever have to delay the project by corresponding with them again. Does that make sense? So I want to thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.